Welcome to the Science of Hockey, the podcast where we break down the science behind ice hockey. I'm the analyst, your host, and every week we explore the data, research, and evidence that shape how we play, train, and understand the game of hockey. From biomechanics to performance psychology, we take you beyond the rink and into the research lab, giving you insights that go beyond hearsay and into what really makes the difference on the ice. Whether you're a player, a coach, a parent, or just someone passionate about the sport, we're here to bring you scientifically backed information in a language that's friendly and easy to understand. So grab your skates and let's dive into the science of hockey. Hello and welcome to the Science of Hockey with your host, the analyst. In this episode, we dissect a pivotal study on injuries in Swiss elite ice hockey. Learn what the data says about game time risks, training impacts, and the future of injury prevention in the sport.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be talking about ice hockey injuries.
Ooh.
Specifically at the elite junior level in Switzerland.
Interesting.
You sent over this really interesting research paper.
Yeah.
It's from March 2024.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be looking at that today.
Sounds good.
We're going to break down the findings and see what's really going on out there on the ice.
It's a great study.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really timely, too.
Okay.
These young players are the future of the sport.
Right.
And it's essential that we understand the risks they face at this critical stage in their development.
So this paper is focused on the Swiss U20 Elite League during the 2019-2020 season.
That's right.
So they surveyed all the players.
Yep.
They tracked all their injuries. They basically crunched all the data.
That's right.
To give us a good idea of what's going on.
And the first thing that jumps out is the overall injury rate.
Oh, yeah.
62% of the players reported at least one injury during that season.
62%.
That's high.
So basically, if you're playing in this league,
Yeah.
there's a greater than 50-50 chance
Right.
that you're going to get injured during the season.
Yeah.
That's a pretty sobering statistic
Yeah.
for any aspiring hockey star out there.
It definitely highlights the physical demands of this sport,
Right.
especially at this elite level.
Yeah.
And it really underscores the importance
Great.
of focusing on injury prevention
Right.
as much as we do skill development.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's dig into the specifics here.
Okay.
What types of injuries were most common? What parts of the body?
Right.
What parts of the body were taking the biggest hits, so to speak?
Well, get ready for this. Almost half
Okay.
of all the reported injuries affected the head and neck region.
Wow, that's alarming. I mean, I know it's a contact sport,
Yeah.
but those numbers are making me want to invest in some extra padding.
Yeah.
So as someone who's seen their share of hockey games, I'm immediately thinking concussions.
Right.
What did this study find about that?
You're right on the money.
Okay.
Concussions were a big problem.
Yeah.
Nearly 25% of all reported injuries.
A quarter of all injuries.
Yeah, that's right.
Jeez.
And most of those were a direct result of contact with other players.
Yikes.
Right.
So that's a scary thought,
Yeah.
considering the potential long-term effects
Yeah.
of repeated head trauma.
Of course. Yeah.
It really makes you think about the safety protocols that are in place
Mm-hmm.
and whether those are enough
Yeah.
to protect these young athletes.
It's a crucial area of concern.
Right.
And the study really drives that point home.
Yeah.
The researchers found that the injury rate was almost 5 times higher
Whoa.
during games
Okay.
than during practice.
So game on equals danger on.
Yeah,
That's pretty wild.
pretty much. Yeah.
I guess it's not surprising considering the intensity
Mm.
and the speed of the competition. But it really underscores the unique risks
Yeah,
that players face
for sure.
when they're battling it out for the win.
The stakes are higher, the adrenaline's pumping,
Yeah.
and sometimes that leads to riskier plays
Okay.
and more forceful collisions.
Okay, so head and neck injuries are leading the pack.
Mm-hmm.
But what else were players dealing with?
Right.
What other aches and pains were sidelining them?
Well, you've survived the head hits,
Uh,
but watch out for those hamstrings and groins.
oh, no.
Those were the next most common way.
Really?
Players got sidelined.
Okay.
Muscle and tendon injuries were the second most prevalent category,
Okay.
accounting for 20% of all injuries.
And sprains and contusions.
Weren't far behind
Oh, wow.
at 18%.
Yeah, that makes sense when you think about all the explosive starts and stops.
Mm-hmm.
The quick turns.
Yeah.
The sheer power involved in skating.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how much stress those kinds of movements put on the body. Did the research delve into any specific causes?
They did.
Or contributing factors?
Yeah.
Was there anything that stood out?
Yeah, there was.
As a particular red flag?
They took a close look at body checking.
Okay.
And the data showed a pretty clear link between body checking and both head and neck injuries.
Okay.
Including concussions.
So body checking's clearly a major culprit here.
Yeah, seems like it.
But isn't that just part of hockey?
Yeah.
How do you balance tradition with player safety?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
Nobody wants to see the sport sanitized.
Right.
But we can't ignore the data either.
Okay.
The study authors suggest a few interesting approaches.
Okay.
And we'll dive into those a little bit later.
Okay.
But first, I think it's worth taking a closer look at the context of these injuries.
Yeah, let's do that.
Right.
I'm curious to see where on the ice these injuries were happening. What kinds of game situations were leading to the most libel?
Well, here's a surprising finding.
Sure.
A significant number of these injuries weren't happening during the big open ice hits you might expect.
Okay.
But rather during one-on-one situations.
Interesting.
And in the player's own defensive zone.
Interesting. So it's not just about avoiding those massive collisions along the boards.
Yeah.
It's also about being aware of the risks involved in those more contained battles.
Exactly.
Of the puck.
It seems like every inch of the ice can be a potential danger zone.
Right.
And it really highlights the need for players to be alert and aware of their surroundings.
At all times.
All the time.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But before we get too deep into prevention strategies, I'm curious about the impact of these injuries.
Okay.
I mean, you're talking about elite level players, so every game counts.
Yeah.
How long were these injuries keeping players off the ice?
Here's where it gets really concerning. Oh, boy. Over 40% of the report injuries resulted in an absence from the ice of 4 weeks or more.
Wow.
Yeah.
4 weeks or more.
Yeah, that's a long time.
That's a huge chunk of the season.
It is.
I can only imagine the frustration for these young athletes.
Yeah.
And the potential setbacks in their development.
Of course.
And their team's performance.
It's a significant issue, and it underscores the need for effective injury management and prevention strategies.
Right.
We'll delve into some of the study's recommendations in a bit.
Okay.
But first, I think it's worth taking a closer look at how these injuries varied by position.
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah.
I'm guessing different positions on the ice come with different risks and vulnerabilities. So who's got the toughest job out there?
Good question.
Let's break it down by position.
Okay.
And see what the data reveals.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Let's suit up and see which positions are taking the brunt of the impact.
Okay.
This study found that wingers, you know those speed demons who are constantly racing up and down the sides of the rink?
Yeah.
They actually reported the highest percentage of head and neck injuries.
Really? Wingers.
Yeah.
That's surprising.
Right.
I would have thought defenders would be more at risk.
Right.
Considering they're often battling along the boards.
Yeah.
And blocking shots.
It's a common misconception.
Okay.
But think about it. Wingers are often involved in those high-speed races for the puck, leading to more collisions and potential for head contact.
Right.
They're also key players in offensive plays, which means they're often maneuvering through tight spaces and facing some pretty aggressive defensive tactics.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not just about the big hits.
Right.
But the constant speed and agility required in that position. It sounds like wingers need to be extra cautious.
They do.
About protecting their heads and necks.
Yeah.
What about the defenders?
Okay.
Did the study reveal anything specific?
They did.
About their injury patterns?
Well, for defenders, the most common injury location, perhaps unsurprisingly, was the upper limbs.
Upper limbs.
Arms and hands.
Okay.
Think about all the stick-checking, blocking shots, battling for the puck along the boards.
Yep.
Their upper bodies are constantly a line of fire.
Yeah. Those arms and hands take a real beating.
Yeah, they do.
I'm wincing just thinking about it.
Yeah.
It really highlights the importance of proper technique and protective equipment for defenders to minimize their risk of upper limb injuries.
Absolutely.
All right, so we've got wingers watching out for head and neck injuries.
Yep.
Defenders protecting their upper limbs. What about those brave souls tending the goal?
Okay.
What did the study reveal about their injury patterns?
Interestingly, goalkeepers had a bit of a different injury profile compared to their teammates.
Right.
While they certainly face their share of risks from those screaming slap shots, their more stationary position and specialized equipment seem to offer some protection.
So they're not dodging checks and jostling for position as much?
No, not as much.
As the other players?
Exactly.
Okay.
The study found that goalkeepers were less likely to sustain upper limb injuries, which were so prevalent among defenders.
Right.
However, they did exhibit a higher proportion of lower extremity injuries.
Interesting.
Particularly to the hips.
The hips. That's interesting.
Yeah.
What would explain that pattern?
Well, the researchers think it's due to the unique movements required of goalkeepers. Think about the quick drops to the ice, the lateral slides, the explosive pushes. All those movements put a lot of stress on the hip joints over time.
Right.
This can lead to muscle imbalances, strains, and even more serious structural problems.
Wow. That's a hidden hazard I never would have considered.
Right.
It really shows how every position on the ice comes with its own set of physical demands and potential injury risks.
Absolutely. It's all about understanding those risks and implementing strategies to mitigate them.
Speaking of strategies you mentioned earlier, the study offered some recommendations for injury prevention. Can we dig into those now?
Sure.
I'm curious to see what they suggest.
They do, and some of them are pretty interesting. The study authors emphasize the importance of more stringent penalties for illegal checking and a greater focus on fair play.
So basically cracking down on the more dangerous hits and promoting a culture of respect on the ice.
That's it.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
It's about protecting the players while still preserving the intensity and the spirit of competition.
The researchers argue that by addressing these aspects of the game, you can reduce the incidence of those high-impact collisions, especially those targeting the head and neck, without fundamentally changing the nature of the sport.
It's about sending a clear message that player safety is paramount right.
Absolutely.
And that reckless behavior won't be tolerated.
It'll be tolerated.
But rules and penalties can only go so far. I imagine education also plays a key role.
It does.
What did the study say about that?
You're right. It's not just about enforcement. It's also about education.
Right.
The researchers strongly advocate for educational initiatives aimed at both players and coaches.
What kind of education are we talking about?
Good question.
I imagine teaching players how to give and receive checks safely.
That's definitely a key component, but it goes beyond just the physical techniques. It also involves raising awareness about the risks associated with head injuries. Equipping players with the knowledge and skills to identify and report potential concussions and fostering a culture where seeking medical attention is encouraged, not stigmatized.
You know, that last part is so important.
It is.
We need to move away from that tough it out mentality that can sometimes prevail in contact sports.
To happen.
It's about prioritizing long-term health over short-term games.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
It is about creating an environment where players feel supported and empowered to make decisions that protect their well-being. And this includes educating coaches on recognizing the signs of concussion and encouraging players to speak up if they're experiencing any symptoms.
So we've got stricter penalties, education initiatives, a cultural shift towards prioritizing player safety. Anything else in their toolkit for injury prevention?
Yes. There's one more recommendation that's particularly intriguing.
Interesting.
Exploring the use of full face protection for players.
Full face protection? You mean like visors that cover the entire face?
Precisely.
Not just the eyes.
While this type of equipment is already mandatory in some leagues and age groups, they suggest expanding its use at the elite junior level, where it's currently optional in many cases.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I can see how that could potentially reduce facial injuries and concussion.
It could.
But I imagine there's some debate.
Yeah, there is.
About whether full face protection might hinder visibility or impact a player's performance.
You're right. There are definitely arguments on both sides. Some players and coaches feel that full face protection can restrict peripheral vision and airflow, potentially affecting decision-making and stamina.
It's a tough call.
It is.
You're trying to find that sweet spot between safety and preserving the traditional feel of the game, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why the researchers advocate for further research.
Okay.
To evaluate the pros and cons of full-face protection.
Right.
And determine its effectiveness in preventing injuries.
Right.
At this level of play.
Yeah.
It's about weighing the potential benefits against any perceived drawbacks.
It seems like there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
No, there isn't.
When it comes to preventing injuries in ice hockey.
Yeah, it's going to take a combination of approaches tailored to the specific needs and context of the sport.
This deep dive has been incredibly informative.
It has.
We've learned so much about the prevalence of injuries in elite junior hockey. The types of injuries players are most susceptible to, the role of body checking and other risk factors, and the steps that can be taken to promote player safety.
It's been a fascinating exploration of a complex topic.
It has.
I think we've both learned a lot.
I agree, and hopefully our listener has too.
I hope so.
This research really emphasizes the importance of staying informed, having open discussions, and working together to make this beloved sport as safe as it can be for young athletes.
Well said. It's a collective effort that involves players, coaches, leagues, and fans alike.
I'm curious as we wrap up this part of our discussion.
Okay.
Did the study offer any insights into the long-term impact of these injuries?
Well, it did.
Did they follow up with players
to
see how they fared in subsequent seasons?
You know, that's a great question.
Yeah.
And one that highlights an important aspect of sports injury research.
Okay.
While this particular study focused on a single season, the researchers acknowledge the need for longitudinal studies that track players over time to understand the long-term consequences of injuries sustained during this crucial developmental stage.
So it's not just about getting back on the ice.
Exactly.
As quickly as possible.
Right.
It's also about ensuring that players can fully recover and avoid any lingering effects that might hinder their performance or overall health down the road.
You're absolutely right. And that's why it's so important to invest in research, prevention programs, and support systems that prioritize the long-term well-being of these young athletes.
Okay. So we've got this call for longitudinal studies to track the long-term effects of injuries.
Yeah.
Anything else on the research agenda?
Oh, yeah, there's a few.
That you think would be valuable to explore?
Yeah, there are.
What other avenues should researchers be looking at?
Yes, there are a few other areas that I think would be worth pursuing.
For example.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about the physical aspects of injury prevention.
Right.
But I think there's a growing recognition of the role psychological factors can play.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
You mean things like stress, pressure to perform, fear of re-injury, how those things can affect an athlete's risk of getting hurt.
Exactly.
I hadn't thought about that.
There's a fascinating body of research emerging that explores the mind-body connection in sports and how factors like anxiety, confidence, and coping mechanisms can influence injury risk. I think it would be incredibly valuable to apply this lens to the world of junior hockey and see what insights we can glean.
I love that idea.
It's about recognizing that athletes are not just machines, but human beings with complex emotions and thought patterns that can impact
their physical performance and vulnerability to injury.
It's a holistic approach.
It is.
That recognizes the interconnectedness of mind and body.
Absolutely.
And I think it holds great promise for advancing our understanding of injury prevention.
You get it.
Yeah.
And that leads us to another important area of research.
Okay.
The role of sleep and nutrition.
The foundations of a healthy lifestyle.
Exactly.
Easy to overlook, but so crucial for performance and recovery.
We know that inadequate sleep can impair cognitive function, reaction time, and decision-making, all of which can increase an athlete's risk of injury.
And poor nutrition can lead to muscle weakness, fatigue, and delayed healing, further increasing vulnerability.
Exactly. It's all connected, isn't it?
It is.
And I think studying these lifestyle factors in the context of junior hockey could reveal valuable insights about how we can optimize player health and resilience.
It's fascinating to think about all the different factors that come into play. When we talk about injury prevention, it's not just about equipment and rules, but also about understanding the athlete as a whole, their physical condition, their mental state, their lifestyle habits.
Exactly.
It's a multi-layered puzzle.
It is, and that's why it's such a compelling area of study. There's always more to learn. And every new discovery brings us closer to creating a safer and more supportive environment for these young athletes.
But while research plays a vital role, it's not the only piece of the puzzle.
It's not.
We need collaboration.
Yeah, we do.
And communication between researchers, coaches, medical professionals, and athletes themselves.
Absolutely.
To translate these findings into meaningful action on the ice.
That's a great point.
It's about bridging the gap between the lab and the rink, so to speak.
Exactly. And it involves creating a culture of shared knowledge and open dialogue where everyone is invested in player safety and well-being.
So it's a team effort, just like the sport itself.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we're all on the same side here, striving to protect these young athletes and help them reach their full potential, both on and off the ice.
What a wonderful sentiment.
Thanks.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, there's one more thing I want to touch on.
All right.
Technology. It's revolutionizing so many aspects of our lives.
It is.
So I'm curious to see how it's being used to prevent injuries in hockey. Are we talking about smart sensors, AI-powered video analysis, maybe even virtual reality training?
You're hitting all the right buttons. Yeah. Technology is definitely playing a bigger and bigger role in injury prevention.
Right.
And there are some really exciting innovations emerging that we'll delve into next.
Okay, so let's talk tech.
All right.
Where do things stand with using technology to keep players safe on the ice?
Well, one area that's gaining a lot of traction is wearable sensors.
Wearable sensors.
Okay.
You can actually track a player's movements, the impact forces they experience, and even their physiological data.
Okay.
All in real time.
Hold on, real time?
Yeah.
So we're talking about like a little device worn under the uniform that can measure things like the G-forces during a check.
That's right.
That's pretty sci-fi.
It is pretty wild. We're basically talking about a mini laboratory on the ice.
Wow.
Collecting all this valuable data that can help us understand how injuries happen and identify potential red flags.
So for instance, we could use this data to spot players who might be at higher risk for, say, a knee injury.
Exactly.
And then adjust their training or equipment before something serious happens.
It's all about shifting from a reactive approach to a proactive one. Using data to anticipate and mitigate risks.
That makes sense.
And it's not just about prevention. These sensors are also incredibly useful for monitoring recovery after an injury.
Yeah, that makes sense. You could get objective data on a player's range of motion, see how their muscles are firing, and track their workload during rehab.
It's a game changer for medical professionals. They can personalize treatment plans, track progress, and ensure a safe and effective return to play, all based on hard data.
It's incredible how technology is blurring the lines between sports science, medicine, and data analytics. But wearable sensors are just one piece of the puzzle, right?
That's right.
What other technological innovations are on the horizon for injury prevention?
Another area that holds a lot of promise is using artificial intelligence, or AI, for video analysis. Imagine a system that can automatically detect those bone-jarring hits, pinpoint risky situations, and even predict potential collisions.
Hold up, predict collisions? Are we talking about pre-crime, but for hockey?
It sounds like science fiction, but it's closer than you think. These AI algorithms are trained on tons of video footage, learning to recognize the subtle cues that usually precede a dangerous hit or a risky play. And by analyzing those patterns in real time, they can alert coaches, referees, or even players.
So like a super observant assistant coach, constantly scanning for danger.
That's it.
That could be huge for preventing injuries, especially from those big collisions.
Exactly.
We've got wearable sensors, AI video analysis. Anything else on the tech front?
Okay, get this.
Okay.
Virtual reality training.
VR. Like those headsets gamers use.
Yes.
How does that apply to hockey?
It's about putting players in a simulated hockey environment. They can practice their skills and decision-making in a safe, controlled setting. No risk of getting checked into the boards.
So like a flight simulator for hockey players?
That's a great analogy.
That's pretty cool.
Just like those simulators help pilots hone their skills. Right. VR can help players sharpen their instincts, make quicker decisions under pressure, and potentially reduce their risk of injury when they're out on the ice.
So train the brain, protect the body.
That's it.
I like it.
It's the future of hockey training. High-tech and data-driven, all in the name of safety and performance.
I think that's a perfect note to end on.
It is.
This deep dive has been eye-opening.
Yeah, it has.
To say the least.
For sure.
We've learned so much about the risks players face, the steps being taken to protect them, and the amazing ways technology is changing the game.
It's been a pleasure exploring all this with you.
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure.
And to you listening.
Yeah.
Remember, stay informed, stay curious, and keep pushing for a safer, more innovative future for hockey.
Absolutely.
Until next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Science of Hockey. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share it with your friends, teammates, or anyone who loves hockey as much as you do. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment to let us know what you liked, what you'd like to hear next, or any questions you have. Your feedback helps us make the show even better. Until next time, keep your skates sharp, your mind open, and keep chasing the science behind the game.